What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Leveled Up Life podcast. Branamier, Courtney, as always, here. Paul McLain.
Let's go.
Helping people level up in all the areas that matter most: faith, family, fitness, finance, and franchise. Turn the volume up. Today's going to be a good one. But before we get into that, bro, we did this last time at the very end, but I want to make sure people know now. June 5th.
June 5th.
June 5th is a big date.
It is.
Tell us about it, bro.
Well, hey, June 5th, this is a date where if you want to go to the next level, right, and you want some like deep dive, I mean, obviously each week our goal is to help you level up your life in all these different areas. And we do our best to really kind of get together, unpack it. What topics do we believe have helped us the most? What have we struggled with? What have we found some solutions with? And but this date, June 5th, we're going to unpack really just a lot on leadership.
Yeah.
Right? How do you lead your life? And the first person that you want to help with leadership is yourself, right?
Sure.
I'm always trying to lead myself better. In fact, this podcast is really about you leading your life in all these different areas, and also learning how to lead where you're at, right? I believe that there's different levels of leadership, and we really want to unpack like how do you lead from every different level, right? You might be in a different place in your corporation or your company or your family, but we're going to just really unpack a lot of different things that's going to help bring just a new perspective to how to attack your life. I know for myself and for you, Bran, we've talked about this quite a bit. Like, the best person to invest in is yourself. Like, a personal growth plan is the best plan I've ever had. I've had plans to hit goals. I've had plans to hit these mile markers in my business. I've had goals for my fitness. I've had goals for faith, right? Where I'm like, I need to read the Bible in a year, or I need to do X, Y, Z. But when it comes to like investing in yourself, that's one of the best investments you can make, is starting to see things different. And the one thing I know to be true, guys, is this: like, the thought process that you have, the thought process I have, it's got me exactly where I'm at. If I want to go to a new level, I've got to think differently. Does that make sense? I've got to have a different thought process. Now, the law of exposure says once you're exposed to something, you can't be unexposed to it. My whole goal is to continuously be exposed to higher thought processes that I now can't be unexposed to, and I can start, really meditating on that. Like, how do I get that? How do I really make that my new thought process? And it's what I do every week when we get together. When I go to church on Sunday, and I hear you bring the word, and you've spent time meditating and praying and really having that word delivered to you from God, I get to sit there and receive, and I always leave with a different kind of thought process, a different perspective, sometimes a different reminder, like, man, that is how I should be seeing it. I've been kind of seeing it this way. And so, June 5th, guys, this is a date where we really want to just, pour into and sow into. I've spent a ton of money in going to these different coaching programs, and just my personal growth plan is probably a 7-figure program that I've put into Brand over the last 2 decades of my life. And I'm a product of that. I wouldn't be who I am in any area of my life if it wasn't because of the intentional choices I made to invest in myself and make sure I could get better and I could grow. So it's a big date.
I love it, man. June 5th. So our very first in-person event. And so we're going to have more information as that comes out down the road, registration, signups, all that information for you guys. But June 5th, mark it on your calendars now. Commit to it now and figure the rest out later. But we're talking about leveling up in all these different areas of our life. And today we want to talk about really letting go to level up, if that makes sense. And so we all have these different hats that we wear, right? And a lot of, what I've learned is that life is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Like, I showed up to Race for Education on what was that, Tuesday?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that.
I was at Tuesday, and I showed up for Brave, who's in kindergarten, so they give him 30 minutes, and then you were there for Penelope and for Perlay, and so we were kind of crossing paths, and they go, "Hey, are you going to run like your brother-in-law?" And I'm like, "Well, how did he run? Let's figure that out first." She's like, "Well, he ran 19 miles basically, right? Like, you ran 28 laps around the track with Penelope, and then did it again with Perlay." Yeah. I was like, nah, he ran all mine for me. And
I did that for you, bro.
Thank you, bro.
I knew your knee.
Yeah, dude, I was just being a cheerleader that day.
Yeah.
I was just,
I don't want you standing halfway upright on the stage, you know what I mean? Being crooked.
Yeah, 100%. And so, but dude, it just got me thinking, life is a marathon. It's not a sprint, right? Like, Penelope didn't go out there and sprint for 28 miles or 28 laps. Mm-hmm. She jogged it, right? She paced herself. She conditioned herself. But the truth is, we're all running somewhere, and she would have got a lot less laps if she was holding on a lot of different things, right? If she was wearing a weight vest, or if she had a trailer behind her, or if she was dragging someone with her, she wouldn't have ran 28 laps. Yeah. And so the truth is, many of us, we're running through life, this marathon called life, and we're holding on to a lot of different things, right? We're wondering why we're not up there with those people, or we're wondering why we're not further ahead, or we're wondering why we haven't reached the milestones in any area that we haven't reached yet. And the truth is, we're holding on to a lot of stuff, and no one else around us is saying anything. Yeah. It's like, because we all got baggage, right? And so it's like, well, he's holding on to that. I ain't going to say nothing because I'm holding on to this. And see, the point of this podcast and really what's the desire of our heart is to like, hey, let's hold each other accountable to like getting to where we know we could and should be. And so that has to come with some harsh reality sometimes of, hey, and some difficult conversations that goes, hey, you're holding on to some shame from the past. Like I can see the way you carry yourself. You're holding on to some regret, some insecurities there. You're holding on to a broke mindset, maybe some unforgiveness. And we want to help you get to the place where we believe God's called you to be, which is abundance, which is greatness, which is blessed to be a blessing. But the truth is you can't ever get to those places if you're holding on to so many weights that hold you back. And so I think the first kind of thought today is, number one, you got to recognize that there might be some weight, right? And so whenever I go to the gym and I'm trying to run or get back in shape, I remember when I was doing jiu-jitsu a couple years ago, like I felt real good before I went in. And then the first like 2 days, I realized how out of shape I actually was. Mm-hmm. So it's not until you challenge yourself, it's not until you put yourself in an environment where you recognize maybe I'm not where I'm supposed to be. Does that make sense? Yeah. And dude, I remember I came out of like the first class and I couldn't even drive home. I sat in my car for like an hour because like I was that out of shape and I didn't look like it. I didn't appear like it. Like if you just see me during the day, it was like, oh, that's just normal Branamier. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't until I put myself in an uncomfortable environment till I realized all the extra weight I was actually holding on to. And so maybe this podcast is that for a couple of people. Like maybe you got to do some digging and go, hey, am I carrying extra weight that I shouldn't be holding on to help me get to that next place? And so,
well, one thing I want to say, because dude, that was so good. You said so much in that. It's kind of like it's the extra work, right? Like for one, I think you'll pick up some stuff like just from plugging in every week, and obviously the reason why we paused and even kind of address this is because the heart desire is really for you to transform and see your life get better, right? It's not just to leave and you're like, man, that was a fire quote, dude. Like that was so good. Like, okay, great, but what can you do? And it's no different than like, you know, the kids playing soccer, right? Blaze is like an absolute animal, right? He's gone to this highest level, and I would just assume that, you know, most kids they do the work that are good, but then there's a kid that after the soccer game is going to reflect on his game. What did I do right? How can I duplicate that? Do that maybe even a little bit better. Work my strength. What did I do wrong? Where are some mishaps? What can I focus on to tweak, adjust, and get better? And all they're doing is they're intentionally saying, it's not easy. It's not fun looking in the mirror. It takes time to look in a mirror, but only looking in that mirror, I'm able to change my image and get that much better, right?
Yep.
And I think that's the goal and the desire. And so as we go through today's podcast, I just believe it's one of those podcasts where throughout it, you got to be taking notes, but then making notes. Taking notes on some of the things you hear, but then making notes on some of the things of like, oh, got it. That's where I got to unpack that. And you got to spend some of that kind of work really going through it to release these weights, because it does take some of that work, and it takes work over time. To the marathon analogy, that's the truth, right? You know, Penelope did so well, and really because I told her to follow my pace, and I had my phone out, and I knew like, hey, 9-minute pace is where we're going to be at, and that got us to exactly 7 miles in 1 hour. And so it was all predetermined, premeditated. We knew exactly what it was. But dude, when we took off, we were in last place for the first like lap and a half. By the second lap, everybody was like dying, like, you know, like, well, they just sprinted, you know what I mean? And that was the ticket. Same thing with Perlay, right? She just paced herself. I did 10:30 because I knew she wasn't built the same as Penelope yet, and she was able to get in 16 laps because it was just paced. And I think that consistency will always beat intensity, and so over a long period of time, you just want to do this work over and over and over again, and you're going to start to see these weights release. But if you just like try to think it's going to be gone in one day and you're just intense with it, no, it takes that daily practice to eventually say, okay, this is now let go, and now I can run to the next level. And I wonder if you've had some really good things that you've taken, some good discipline, some habits that have been discussed, but you're like, I just don't see them really coming to fruition. Well, maybe it's because it's not what you needed to hold on to, but it's what you need to let go of.
That's good.
And so that's what we're going to kind of unpack. So jump into the first one.
Yeah. I mean, the truth is you can't fix what you won't admit, right? And so just going through some of these, like forgiveness, for example, I think And this is a big one for a lot of people. Like, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, but like the way you were raised, like your parents might have raised you a certain way, and as you've gotten older and you have a different worldview, or just have gone through different experiences, like you look back and go, man, my childhood was kind of messed up, and without even knowing it, you've held on to like some unforgiveness with your mom, with your dad, with your cousins, with your whatever, and that is preventing you from walking fully in your current relationships now, right? Like your dad might have, like I remember, so when I was 11, my parents divorced, and I had two different lifestyles, dude. It was crazy. Like my dad was a business owner, entrepreneur, like that's all I knew. And then when they split up, my mom became a single mom. So like, it was 1 week on, 1 week off. And so I would go to my dad's house and I was rich, and I'd go to my mom's house and I was poor, right? So it was like this weird dynamic back and forth. And my dad was always like thriving, and it seemed like my mom was always struggling. That was at least my perspective of it, right? And then my dad had like 2 other kids. I got married again. My mom always stayed single. So it was just like this weird dynamic going back and forth. And I remember I didn't struggle with it at the moment, because like they did a really good job of like co-parenting and keeping like my eyes filtered from seeing certain things. But I remember as I got older, I remember there was probably some things in me, like in my current relationship, that I was like, dude, I learned that bad habit from like my dad, or I learned like how to respond like that. So I had to like walk through some, like, I forgive him for like certain things or certain things that I was exposed to that I didn't even recognize unless I would have reflected on it, right? And so I think some of us, like, number one, you got to be intentional about where you're going, like what you're talking about, like preparing and planning and having a place that you want to get to, but then also at the same time, it requires some reflection and going, hey, what am I holding on to? And so that's just one small example, but forgiveness, I think, is one thing that many people struggle with, especially when it comes to like parent-kid relationship. Or even like this could be in a workplace, right? Like you left that broker, and now you're with this broker, and you're holding on to all this drama from the past, or this agency, and you're holding on to all this stuff from the past. And it's like, if you don't ever let that go and address what actually happened, you'll never be able to fully be who you are in this season. That makes sense.
That's good, dude.
And so forgiveness, I just think, is a big one for a lot of people. But there's many things we can dive into.
Well, I think with that one, I would almost suggest, like, we'll put the link down here in the podcast where you can go back and watch that episode we did on forgiveness, because I feel like it is like a 40-minute series to really go through. We had a whole worksheet. We'll put the worksheet back down below as well that you can go through, because I think you said it right, man. That's one of those things that kind of sneaks in, and it's in that hidden spot in your heart, and you don't really unpack it and ever deal with it. And what if you dealt with it, and 5 years later, your levels above in all these different areas because you spent the time to deal with that hidden spot in your heart. And I know every person has unforgiveness. Even as you work through it, every day I got to make sure I'm not developing forgiveness just from interactions, and this person does you wrong and they say this and it'll come through. And I mean, it could be even with your spouse says this and you're holding on to it, and it was, and you're not really, you're trying to make sense of it, right? And I think unforgiveness, really what it boils down to, is stop trying to make sense of what was happening and just openly say, I just forgive, right? Like, I think for me, a lot of times, even in business, I would try to figure out why something was done and why the reaction or the action was taken, because it didn't make sense. It was like, there'd be certain situations where, I went above and beyond and out of my way and really blessed this person, and then the response was entitlement.
Yep.
And almost like this response that kind of hurt me. I was just like, man, why would you respond like that? And I would try to figure it out. And I remember hearing this. I don't know if it was from Jim Rohn. It was I think it was a book or an audio book I was listening to. He said, that's a class that if you sign up for, you're never going to pass. So just don't sign up for it.
Yep.
And dude, that's been some of the most helpful advice I've had. And maybe because I deal with so many people. Yeah. But it's been so helpful for me just to go, anytime I find myself like trying to unpack like different things that take place. Like I said, it could be with your spouse, it could be with your boss, it could be with anybody. You say, man, I'm not going to sign up for that class. Because the reality is you don't really know what they're going through, what were the underlying things that produce that response. And I remember hearing this, and I want to say it was Zig Ziglar, dude. I was young, listening to like back in the day, like an MP3.
Yeah.
And in the Chrysler 300, man, I had my subs going to make sure if he said something deep, it rattled. But he said it was like, who kicked your cat? Have you ever heard that? So it's a longer story, but in essence, the summary of it is like the boss like yells at you, right, and freaks out, and it's like you think it was your fault, but it wasn't. It goes all the way back to, or no, it was the cat. I'm sorry. At the end of the day, the cat gets kicked. It's like, why would that person kick the cat? Yeah. But it goes back to like the employee, that didn't think that they were getting valued and they got underappreciated. And then they responded because the person above them.
Right. It's the whole butterfly effect.
The whole butterfly effect. And everybody kind of felt the same way. Right.
Right.
And they didn't feel valued and appreciated. And so then they kind of responded in such a way. Before you know it, at the end of the day, the consequence is this cat just gets nailed, dude. It's like the cat jumps out and he just takes out the aggression on the cat. And it's like the kick the cat concept. And it's like, you just don't know. Right? Like, we just don't know. So, I mean, I think, for one, I would watch that podcast. I think it's going to provide a lot more clarity to it. And also, the desire with that, because we knew that was a hard topic to uncover.
Yeah.
And Brent, I think you did a great job navigating that. Because it's such a bigger deal. Like, even our ability to accept forgiveness from Christ, we have to forgive others. Think about the Lord's Prayer. It's like, forgive those that have sinned against me, as or what is it? Forgive my debtors as I. How does it go? Lord's Prayer. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
It's 'cause I got to do it from the beginning, I think. But it's like, forgive those that have sinned against me as you forgive me of my sins, right? That's what it is. And so the first thing is like, I got to forgive those that have sinned against me, so I can receive the forgiveness of the sins that I've committed against God, right? And so I think it's such a powerful thing that if we hold on to unforgiveness, we're not able to truly receive the forgiveness that God's paid for us on the cross.
Yeah, 100%.
Which then we're walking around shame and guilt that it's already been paid for, right? And so a lot to unpack there, but I
love it, man. I mean, just to clarify, like Ephesians 4:32 says, be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other just as God has forgiven you. And so that's the ultimate truth, right? When it's hard for us to forgive, and when there really is offense there and hurt there, at the end of the day, even if you can't make sense of it logically, then we forgive from a place of faith because we've been forgiven. Mm-hmm. That's really what it comes down to. So there's steps to like letting go of this way. I think the first one would be forgiving, right? Mm-hmm. The second one would be then choosing to be grateful. Like, we talk about this all the time. Like, gratitude is a strategy to then move forward. So that you got to forgive, and then you got to be like, I have so much to be grateful for. I have so many good things going on in my life. I have so many great people in my life, and it's, for me, like, this is something that I'm very intentional about, even with the smallest detail. It's like, because I want to be grateful for everything, because I know what some people are going through on the other side of the world or on the other side of town, right? And sometimes you can become so numb to the blessing that is all around you. And so if you're going to get to that next level, like, gratitude has to be a part of that strategy. Let's talk about some more maybe weights that are holding us back. I think for a lot of people, it might be a broke mindset or limiting beliefs. I think is a big one for people, especially business owners, man. I think even when it comes to finances, I think a lot of people put a lid on themselves, and we can maybe spin this in a different direction if you want. But, and you could probably speak to this because you've hired and trained so many different agents who come in maybe from a job mentality. Now they're like a 1099 contractor and they're in sales, and they think like, man, if I could just make $100,000, then I could, like, I'll be rich, right? We both been there before. Like, dude, I'm gonna kill it, and then you do it. It's like, I still don't have no money. Like, what are you talking about? Because the more money you make, if you don't have the right mentality, right mindset, you just spend it all, and it's gone. So maybe talk about a little bit, like, maybe a broke mindset or limiting beliefs is a thing that holds a lot of people back from getting to that next level, and it's actually a weight that's holding them back because of what's been instilled to them, maybe through childhood, maybe through just environment.
Dude, 100%, man. I think that, like, the biggest way that you can cast quicksand along the gap you're trying to cross is through this broke mindset. It's complaining, blaming, justifying, and excuses.
That's good.
Those are the four things that you're literally like, I'm wanting to move forward, right? Because sometimes the broke mindset doesn't mean I've stopped working, I've stopped moving forward. You still even have this desire to get to the goal, but it's just easier to just complain away and justify away and excuse away the reason why your results.
Dude, say those four things again. complaining, blaming, justifying,
and excuses.
That's so good, dude.
I think it was a book, Magic Think Big. They call it like excuse-itis, right? And it's an easy thing to pick up because the longer you got to wait for the result to show up when you've been making movement forward, the easier it is to just grab onto the excuse because it just makes you feel a little bit better when that pain of disappointment is setting in. And so it's like, well, instead of me picking that up, for one, you got to be aware of it, right? And so a couple things like justifying is saying, well, I didn't go to the gym because of this.
Yeah.
Or I didn't go, make that sales call because of this. Or I didn't pray for that person even though I felt nudged because of this. It's justifying. And I think the more valid the justification is, the easier it is to pick it up. I was talking to the guys about this. Had a guy come in and he said, man, I want to build a business. I want to build a team. But he's like, I'm just worried that if I build a team, it's going to take away from my personal production. He's like, do you think that's a thing? I was like, oh, bro, 100% it's a thing. I said, because it's the most justifiable excuse. I said, if you're a disciplined person and you're driven and you want to go after your goals, you can't say, well, I didn't make my calls today because I slept in. You couldn't live with yourself. You couldn't buy that justification.
Right.
You won't do it. But if you say, I didn't hit my sales goals because I was training somebody,
people.
I was serving somebody, I said, bro, that's an easy one to buy. And I said, people buy it all the time. And the truth is, the best way you can build that team and serve the team is by your production, by your example. So I said, if you're a good producer and a good promoter, you'll build a successful team. It'll actually help you produce more because you'll realize how your team is growing when they're seeing your production. And you also will want to perform because you know that your example matters significantly. Bad example, they're going to do twice of what that is. Good example, they might do half. So you'll realize, like, man, my best way to lead is not by position. Not like I'm now the trainer because I've recruited
That's
you.
so good, dude.
I said, no, now you've given up the ability to be average and ordinary. You've got to go produce and you got to promote the system. Get them on the calls, get them on the training. Let that lift the load. And don't buy the excuse because the reality is you're not the best trainer. The person on the podcast, the person that wrote the script, they're a better trainer than you. So just promote that, edify them, let them do that, and you go produce. But it was because it was a good justification. And it's so easy. I saw it over and over again. Like, dude, why'd you only help 4 families last month? Man, I has helped my team. I was like, bro, okay,
Dude, I love that, man. That's good. I'm even thinking about in my own walk, right? So you can even justify like your successes. Like we've been,
that's good.
You know what I mean? Like you can go to the opposite way. So it's like, man, we've been killing it the last 4 years, and look how many people we'll reach.
That's good.
Therefore, we don't have to do that. Like, bro, we're killing it. Like, look at this team. Look how many people we're gathering.
Compromise.
And you're compromising like your calling because you're drunk in your own success, right?
That's good.
And you're not actually like you may still be living under your potential and under your purpose, even though you've seen some fruit, which is that's a scary place to be because you get comfortable and you're like, well, dude, I helped 100 people, but your calling is to help 1,000.
Oh, that's good.
You know what I mean? So it's like you can justify your way out of because you look around and you go, dude, and many people end up being big fish in small ponds because it strokes their ego and just go, dude, you ain't supposed to be here anyways. Like that was for a season, but you've made it a lifetime, right? And then you justify where you're at, and then you live with so much internal. You don't express this out loud because you don't want people to know, but you live with internal regret and internal like, man, I know there's more, right? And because we're not talking to people who are not. If you're this far in the podcast, you're not unambitious, right? You're like you got some level of like getting after it. You're somewhere on the spectrum where like I'm trying to make something of myself. And so don't even get caught up in your own successes. That's why I think, man, it's so easy just to compare and when you're doing great to look down on other people and go, at least we're not that. And it's like and then from a faith perspective, God's looking down like,
dude, that's good.
What are we talking about here? I've called you to reach 10,000 and you've stopped at 1,000. Man, you know what I mean? So it's like
even the internal, like, dude, that's stated so well. Like nobody typically will know it, but you do.
100%.
Like because God put it in you.
Right.
Your potential is not it's God's potential. He created you, so you know when there's this gap between like what you've done and what God's called you to. And sometimes that's when you stop depending on Him and you start thinking that you start reading all your press clippings like, bro, look what I've done. It's like, bro, it wasn't you in the first place, man. That was just God working through you.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, if you want to keep moving forward, your lid is God's floor. He's just getting started, bro. Like, there's so much more. That's the whole exceedingly, abundantly more, not just what you could do. But, dude, I remember to the comparison, like, I heard this quote, and it was like, when you compare, it either makes you feel inferior or superior, neither honor God. So sometimes we compare, like we said on the other side, where you're comparing to somebody that's so much bigger and further than where you've been. Well, that makes you feel inferior. That doesn't honor God. You're his masterpiece. Or you'll compare and say, look how great I am. Look at that fool. He's still in his mom's basement. Well, that makes you superior. That doesn't honor God either.
Yeah.
And so the goal every day is to what? It should be to honor God. And that's going to be based off, you moving forward and not thinking like you've arrived. Dude, that's so good, dude.
Well, I think it's why like self-awareness is so important. You don't get caught up in the comparison trap. There's a story in the Bible where Moses is he's basically doing all the ministry work, right? He's judging all the cases, and he's counseling all the people, and he's doing all the things. And his father-in-law comes and he's like Moses, you're killing yourself. You're doing way too much. People, like, go out and find some capable men and like task them with the responsibility. So he puts them in groups like, all right, you take 10 people, you take 50 people, you take 100 people, you take 1,000 people, right? And so if I give you one agent to go mentor, like, that would be so far under your potential. Like you need to mentor like thousands, right? But then you get someone over here who's less experienced. Like, hey, that person's capable of one or two or five, right? And so it's like, you have to know who you are, and your lid is not your surroundings. Your lid is not the people next to you. Your lid is like what God placed on the inside of you. And if you know you're not at your lid, or if you feel like you're at your lid, and it ties back into our first point, you need to get into a new room, because there's always a new level. There's always a new lid. And I don't know, man. I think limiting beliefs and limiting mindset holds back a lot of people. It's like they just stay stuck, or they get comfortable, and it's like, man, you should be your mile pace should be a 5-minute mile, and you're comfortable running 8 minutes because you're beating everyone else. It's like,
dude, 100%. It's like, I think that even like with the blaming, like, that's easy to go back and say, well, you don't know how I was raised, or you know what happened. And it's like, I hear you, but it's not what happened to you. It's what you choose to let happen in you, right? And how you respond to it. I mean, and that's it's an understandable thing to be said. It's a hard thing to actually internally deal with. But blaming, I feel like it really just, again, casts the quicksand. So you're like, I want more, but then you slowly start to blame. Well, now you're moving and you're going nowhere, right? You're moving and you're sinking down. Well, you can't blame your parents. You can't blame your boss. You can't blame that situation. And dude, it's such an easy thing to do, to become this victim, and it creeps in. And now you're no longer living as the victor that you've been created to be, but you're living as a victim that the enemy wants you to be. And now everything's happening to you, right? And I think it's a quick shift to even say, like, a couple affirmations a lot of my affirmations, Brand, that I've picked up, over the last couple of recent years, has been simply just to remind me. Yeah. One of my affirmations that I have every morning is that I choose to not be offended. I'm bigger than any offense.
It's good.
Just because I know, even though I know the stuff we're talking about, but that doesn't mean that, like, I'm all of a sudden, precluded from not having this happen. Like, dude, it's easy to happen, right? It's almost like, what is it? The scripture says, like, when the house is clean, there's like more friends come, right? More, like, I know if I'm, it's easier for me to be attacked with these kind of things, right? And so it's like, I got to be reminded that I'm bigger than any kind of an offense, right? And so those are kind of things like the affirmations. Like, even my affirmation is like, things don't happen to me, they happen for me. That's a daily affirmation. Why? Because as I enter my day, I know that I'm going to have opportunities to either pick up a victim mindset and can find justification to support it, or I can find opportunity in all those things. And the difference is, man, night and day difference, bro.
Yep.
Significantly levels different just from the response to what happens.
It's great reminders. I think when you drop the dead weight, when you affirm the right things, right, then what happens is you begin to move in a different way. Like, when you let go of what the things are holding you back, it seems like new doors begin to open for you, right? New relationships, new friendships, new joy, new peace, new mindsets, new ways of thinking, new opportunities, because you're not carrying all the things that were holding you back. You're not carrying the insecurities. You're not carrying the shame. You're not carrying the guilt. You're not carrying the baggage. and now you're walking with purpose. And here's the truth: you never arrive. It's a journey, right? Like you never get there. Once you're there, there's always a new there. And so I think as we're all doing this marathon called life, we just have to remind, and we all pick up stuff along the way, right? The longer your trip is, the more you carry.
Yeah.
And so you just have to remind ourselves, like we got to remind our wives when we go on vacation, like you don't need all of it. Like
Dude, that's a good analogy.
One or two things would be okay. Like we would survive without some of those things. And that's the truth. Like every once in a while you got to go, hey, we're bringing way too much stuff into this next season. Let's shed some of this weight because God has more in store for us, and God has a different pace maybe for us to run in this new season. And so wherever you find yourself at, whether you're in your faith, your family, your fitness, your finance, your franchise, do an audit of your life. I say that a lot, but it's so true. Just to take an inventory, like where are we at? What are we holding on to that we need to let go? Maybe there is some forgiveness. Maybe there is some guilt. Maybe there is a mentality from the past that I'm taking into this new season. Or maybe I'm justifying my new way of living, and I'm living under my potential. I'm not saying it out loud, but internally I know that I'm living underneath where I should be. And our goal, like we said all the time, is to help you progress to the next place that God has for you. So
I love it, dude.
That's a good one, man.
Yeah. Unbelievable, man. Some great things. I hate the one you just said. Write that down. I'm sitting here trying to meditate and unpack that. Like, the longer the trip, the more you'll typically try to carry.
Yeah.
Like that could be pretty deep if you really kind of look at it, right? And the reality is, like, if you're gonna run far, dude, you can't pack a whole lot. So it's like the paradox, right? Mm-hmm. But if you're going on vacation, you pack a lot.
There's a tension. That's the tension of life.
I called you to go on vacation all the time.
Right.
You don't get a lot done on vacation. You might recharge and rest up. I mean, you don't want to go like on a 3-month vacation, right? So, hey, this was good, man. Thank you, bro, for your wisdom and perspective.
Thank you, man.
As always. And guys, hey, let's go out there and kind of think about the podcast, like, right? Like, what can we take away? What can we adjust? What can we apply? And the goal is every day just a little bit better, not 100% better necessarily, but if you get 1% better over a long period of time, man, that compound effect works in such a beautiful way where you look up and you say, man, I don't know how I got here. Don't despise what seems to be the insignificant little activities that you do over time, man. They add up and they reflect your entire life. So guys, go make it a big week. Be strong, stay steadfast. We love you. God bless you guys.